Welcome to Visionary Doc, where ambition meets purpose and self-discovery fuels transformation. Are you chasing success but feeling unfulfilled? Delve into the joys and jolts of high-achieving lives, and together, let's redefine ambition. It's time to strip away the pathological and embrace the potential. Join host Dr. Shez as we explore what it means to be a visionary of your own life.
My OG mentor, Dr. John Berdahl, he's a board-certified and world-renowned ophthalmologist, advanced Thompson Vision, and founder and chair of Balance Ophthalmics. And so thanks for being here, Dr. Berdahl.
Hey, Shehzad. This is going to be fun.
This is going to be awesome, man. We've already kind of hit it off prior to the recording here. So we'll just go with it. So, tell us a little bit about yourself initially. We'll just kind of do the traditional intro, and then we'll take it in a different direction.
Yeah, so how about this? I'm a small town kid, grew up in a town of 500 people, was going to be an engineer, decided I had to do something easier. So I was going to be an eye doctor, my family optometrist. I was going to go to optometry school, got accepted, got a scholarship. My family optometrist said, hey, I think you should be an ophthalmologist. He was probably trying to protect optometry from me. I said I wasn't sure if I'm smart enough. He said, humor me, take the MCAT. Took the MCAT, taught high school for a year in between. I was a high school math teacher at the high school I graduated from. Got accepted, went to medical school, thinking I was going to do ophthalmology, and did. And now if you gave me a blank piece of paper and a pen, I wouldn't have the courage to write the story as well as it's gone for me. That's not to say there haven't been extraordinary difficult things that have come along, or that hasn't been crises of confidence along the way either. But when I zoom out, one, nobody's going to feel sorry for John Berdahl, and they shouldn't. And number two, when I zoom out, I'm doing what I'm meant to do on a number of different levels, and with people that I love every day, my team, our patients, and our family. So that's the story. I do most of my time is spent practicing ophthalmology, but have taken a couple of forays into entrepreneurship. That's punched me in the nose a couple of times, and we've punched back a couple of times, and in general, trying to add more than we take out of the world.
I love it. That's beautiful. And the entrepreneurship piece is the one that I want to touch on a little bit more. Do you identify as an entrepreneur? Like, is that kind of a part and parcel of your identity now? And it's kind of along the same line of thread as, what does that mean to you? What does entrepreneurship mean to you as an identity that you embody?
I would say that being an entrepreneur is part of my identity. I never knew what the parcel piece of part and parcel means. So
Me neither. I just said it, bro.
so I assume that I am part and parcel an entrepreneur, but it's second professionally to being a doctor, being an ophthalmologist. So it is not the first thing that I identify with professionally. The first thing is, getting to do cataract surgery and cornea transplants and glaucoma surgery on little old ladies that are great.
Yeah. And as we go through life, we transform into other parts of our identity, right? There's so many different parts to us. And so there's John Berdahl, the ophthalmologist, there's John Berdahl, the entrepreneur. When did you first kind of realize that that's something you want to pursue? And let me give you a little context to what I want to really ask about is, people go into it for a lot of different reasons, right? Like if you get something to prove to someone, you can read Elon Musk's book and kind of get that a little bit, right? For me, it was because I wanted freedom, right? I wanted to be able to practice medicine and kind of live the life that I want because I choose to, not necessarily because I have to. And so for me, it was an endeavor based in the pursuit of freedom. What was it for you?
It's probably a combination of two things. One, to prove to myself that I could do it, to see what I had for me. I never really had the desire to prove it to anybody else. I'm not really that motivated that way. And then the other thing is probably a curiosity that bites you and you can't quite shake it. So when you're in the shower and you're washing your hair, it's what you're thinking about. And so I've always kind of been a person that I'd rather not even have a good idea than have a good idea that I'm not a good and important idea that I'm not executing on. And so to answer your question, the two drivers were prove to myself if I could do it, but mostly it was you got bit by some idea and just couldn't shake it.
Hmm. And so you told me that in the context of Equinox. I think back then it was Equinox, the balance goggles. And was that something that was born out of that curiosity that you just couldn't shake?
For sure.
Yeah, yeah. And why was it that curiosity could only be scratched through the avenue of business?
Let me tell the story of it because I
Yeah.
think it's insightful for other physician, potentially entrepreneurs. So it started when I had an idea about what glaucoma is when I was scuba diving as a first year resident, at Duke. And I went scuba diving and thought if you dive down 30 feet, you had 760 millimeters of pressure to your eyeball. And I think, and so the pressure in your eye goes up 760 millimeters of mercury. How's that possible? How can we even tolerate that? And it's because all the other pressures in the body go up in lockstep, blood pressure, CSF pressure. So then I said, okay, well, then it can't be just the absolute pressure inside the eye that drives the disease. It's got to be related to other pressures in the body. And on the other side of the optic nerve is CSF. And then we studied it. Okay, so we studied it and found out that it looks like that's true. And a bunch of people have studied it after that. And it probably is true that glaucoma is at least a two-pressure disease, IOP and CSF. So then I go to fellowship and I'm meeting with Dick Lindstrom with this idea. And I share it with him and I'm nervous. He's the godfather. And I get done with my heartfelt, data-driven presentation and he says, I think you're right. What are you going to do about it? And I said, well, what do you mean? What am I going to do about it? People are going to think that I'm smart and I'm going to be famous. And and he said, well, I actually like to take these scientific discoveries and try and turn them into something that can benefit people, and maybe even a company that can benefit you. And around that same time, I was reading a book called The End of Poverty by Jeffrey Sachs. And what that book taught me is that sustainable innovation only comes when there's a sustainable economic engine for it. Essentially, that's what business is it's where you provide enough value with your good or service that someone else is willing to give, what they have, or in this case, it happens to be money in exchange for that good or service. And, this person wins because they're selling a good or service, and this person wins because they're receiving something that's worth more than what they paid for it. And that is almost always the sustainable economic engine over time, where all the stakeholders get the value, the patient, the payer, the doctor, the inventor. Everybody has to win in order for it to be sustainable. Now, don't take that as a criticism of philanthropy. I believe in it and do it, or mission work or charity work. Those kind of things I think change the heart, so that you do have the power to have a business. You also have a moral compass to point that business in the right direction. And boy, it feels like I got preachy real fast.
That's the John Berdahl I know, man. So I wouldn't expect anything less. But no, I think you're touching on this concept of, I grew up kind of learning, a different type of business philosophy, right? Very transactional, where, you can do well, right, for yourself, but not necessarily do good as well, right? But I feel like in any line of work, especially in healthcare, in our line of work, right? You can do good and you can do well at the same time, and I think that's sort of the philosophy that you're touching upon.
Yeah, so a couple of things. One, man, I'm so sad we're losing the greatest generation. That's part of what my grandma was, the greatest generation. And she influenced me tremendously. But when I also use phrases like doing well by doing good
Yeah.
and win-win.
Yeah.
In fact, I used it just before as an example. I never heard my grandma say that. I heard her say, you do it because it's the right thing to do.
Mm.
And no, and then you'll benefit from it.
Mm.
And so I do think that we have lost some of those things. I don't think that there's any crime or any sin in doing well by doing good. In fact, I think that there's a moral imperative, especially in healthcare, to do good. And I think that it happens that we do well. And in business, I think that, solving authentic problems is a good way to do good. And then if we turn out to do well because of that, that's good too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it goes kind of back to that sustainability, right? That economic engine you were talking about. And it might be that this is just the day and age that we live in, but you kind of need to do well, right, in order to continue to do good.
That's
It's
right.
right.
I think that is true.
Yeah.
There's a few Mother Teresa's out there that'll continue to do good despite not doing well and do it just by force of inspiration and personality.
Yeah.
Most of us are more mundane than that, more less committed than that.
Yeah.
And so in order to continue to do good, you have to have an economically sustainable engine.
Yeah, I agree. And on this journey, right, of being an entrepreneur, the doing well good, the doing good, doing well, all that part is great. But I feel like one of the things I love about being an entrepreneur and just being on this journey is that I think it is a great exercise in character development, right? And self-transformation. To be an entrepreneur is to continually develop yourself in all aspects of your being. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I can talk a lot about that. Um,
Fast.
so, yeah, I'll probably use Equinox and now Balance Ophthalmics as the example. So you have this idea. Dick challenges me to create a company out of it. I said, I don't have any good ideas. He said, opportunity favors the prepared mind. Eventually, we had an idea for these negative pressure goggles that'll release some of the weight of the atmosphere over the eye, and we can dial in the eye pressure to what we want it to be more like. So started a company, put in some money, did a first in man prototype, worked, raised more money. And then we got some negative commentary by an expert that said this is bad, not good. Not really offering up any new data, just saying that he didn't believe it was good. And that led to it's amazing how as an entrepreneur, there's millions of bullets whizzing at you anytime. Every one of them can kill you, but there's only a few pathways through the bullets. And that ultimately led to the company dying.
Mm.
And dead. And a lot of investors lost money.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of people on our team, everybody on our team lost their job. And they didn't do something wrong. And we did a lot of stuff right. I mean,
Yeah.
we made mistakes, but and so there's a crisis in confidence that can come with that. Even more so for me. I mean, I hated losing the investments, but I also really hated that people had dedicated their lives to this idea and part and parcel dedicated their lives to me.
Yeah.
And I didn't deliver. I feel like the motivations were worthy of the trust, but the outcome was not. And people lost their jobs and their careers and whatever reputational damage may come along with that. And so then I had to decide, what are we going to do here as this company's on its way to bankruptcy?
Gosh.
And ultimately bought it back after going out for bid before it ultimately had to go through bankruptcy, or would have bought it back through bankruptcy, and said, no, I believe and you can kill me, but I'm not going to quit. And we had additional data that we could bring forward and brought that forward, and recently had an FDA panel and had a 13-0 unanimous agreement that the likely benefit outweighs the likely risk, and that greatly increases our chances of getting an FDA approval. And we're hopeful that we do. And so it's got new life, and that feels great. But it didn't feel great until
Can't imagine.
we had that panel. And and a lot of people have asked if that tried to doesn't it feel great to prove the naysayers wrong? And I guess it wouldn't be entirely truthful to say I don't care about that at all,
Yeah.
but I don't care about it much. Would
Yeah.
I felt like I was a person that had grit, but that proved to me
Mm.
that I had grit. And going back to my grandma, she would say, John, you'd care a lot less what other people thought about you if you realized how infrequently they did. And and she's right.
Stage.
She's right. And so the mountain of entrepreneurship to climb is hard. And my advice to entrepreneurs when they're thinking about it is that, you know, do it if you can't get it out of your head without trying. If it's an itch, you just absolutely have to scratch, do it. Because if not, most of it just falls apart because of lack of fortitude, because it was exciting in a moment, but that moment isn't going to be sustained as you start to really create a business. And, Shehzad, not to get too, faith-based or anything, but I remember feeling a little big for my britches a few years ago, 5, 6 years ago, whatever. And I prayed, just help me try to actually be humble. And I shouldn't have prayed that because shortly after that, the company dies and I'm really, you know, fighting for this thing and trying to believe in myself a bit. And ultimately on the bigger picture zoomed out, all of that was good for me as a human, and hopefully it'll be good for humanity too with another treatment for glaucoma.
Gosh, man. So your company is, hitting the tank and you still believed in yourself to buy it back,
I
right?
still believed in myself enough
Enough. Yeah.
to buy it back. Not total belief in myself, but enough. And those are also some places where there's a handful of people that come alongside and whisper in your ear, hey, I believe in you. And in those crises of confidence, that helps.
And that's what I was going to ask, right? Like, it takes a village. It takes a community of people that really believe in you so that you can believe in yourself, right?
I don't know that I agree with that, Shehzad, totally.
Okay.
I think it's close. And
Yeah.
I've had a great village with some
Yeah.
of the absolute greats, right? Vance,
Yeah.
Dick Strom, Terry Kim, Andy Corley, Bill Link, Rick Lewis, Leon Herndon, Tom Samuelson, Dave Harden, just the best
Yeah.
people. But I don't think that I think they call it self-confidence for a reason. It can't come from anybody else. Their belief didn't create my belief. Their belief in me in a moment where I had a crisis in confidence helped bridge that moment.
Mm.
You can't get self-confidence externally, I don't believe.
Yeah. Where does that intrinsic self-confidence and self-belief come from?
My daughter has it. I think that my son has it too. I guess I think that it comes maybe from knowing who you are, what you believe, and then your actions aligning with your beliefs to say, I am who I believe I should be.
Hmm. Let's go deeper.
Well, I'm not always. I still do stuff that I
Yeah.
wrong and sometimes do it anyway.
Mm.
But I think that if you spend the time to understand, who is Shehzad, who is John, who is whatever.
Mm.
Okay, I've got a good sense of that. Okay, now if this is what drives me or this is my why or whatever you want to call it, do my actions align to that?
Mm.
At least most of the time. And if my actions align with who I believe I should be and that is also who I am, then
Mm.
I think you have that self-confidence that can still get rocked when
Mm.
life's coming at you hard, whether that's a business or a marriage or, God forbid, mental illness or something like that. But I think that that's where it comes from.
I
You
get
know,
it, man.
maybe faith. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
different people have different versions of that, but maybe faith plays a role.
Yeah. No, I get it, right? You have to really you believe in your heart of hearts that John Berdahl is someone who is resilient, who has grit, and who doesn't give up. And
Yeah.
if that is true, then your actions have to align with it. And so you see this thing that you started and it's not going in the direction you initially wanted it to go. If those traits about you and that belief about you is true, then it's almost like it's an easy decision. You have to, right? You gotta you got to grab it and go.
It didn't feel easy in the moment, but when you zoom
Right.
out and look at it at arm's length, it is an easy decision because if that's who you are, that's what you have to do.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, that's really profound. I want to talk to you about contrarian thinking, right? There's this concept I recently came across, and it's this like almost paradigm shift or perspective shift in with regards to how you think about life, business, money, anything, right? That is contrarian and so almost counterintuitive, but when you follow that line of thinking, it has always resonated as the right decision for you. Is there anything like that that you can think?
Yeah. Yeah, I got a couple of thoughts on that. One is, and I'm not going to be able to cite the source, but I've heard a couple of times that if you're going to make an impact, you know, maybe entrepreneurial or a scientific discovery, almost always it happens in the first 5 years within your training or during your training. And so I think that that's when we probably are the most independent thinkers. And then if you teach yourself to think independently,
Mhm.
you are more likely to continue to add to that. So, and I think that naivety is an asset when used properly. So if glaucoma really is the balance between intraocular pressure and intracranial pressure, had I been 10 years down the road, I would have said, nah, somebody else would have thought about that. And that's what was told to me when I first brought the idea back. So,
Mhm.
so I don't, I do think that contrarian thinking can be a good, useful lens, but I would also say that if you take contrarian thinking, you're usually wrong. So don't, you can't be George on Seinfeld where he just did the opposite of what he thought he should do every time and it turned out great. That doesn't work. I think, or if you say, hey, the earth is flat, because most everybody thinks it's round. Well, it turns out most everybody's right.
Hmm.
Contrarianness, I think of it more as independent thinking
Hmm.
and thinking of it at kind of, as Elon Musk would say, from first principles.
Yeah.
Is this real? Is this possible? Can, build it up from the physics or whatever you need to do. And then look at things through a contrarian lens. Let's take a situation and totally reverse it. It's probably not going to be right, but it'll give you insights to attack the problems differently.
Hmm. It's just a unique perspective to look at things from a different lens.
Yeah, and by the way, there's lots of different lenses. One is a contrarian lens, another one would be a first principles lens, another one would be a business lens, another one would be a human lens. How is this going to affect people and their feelings? And I think that the best people can put different lenses in front of them as they look through a problem and then come to a solution that appropriately values all the constituencies.
Hmm. In your view, and I think what's back when I spent some time with you, what was the word? You think you used a phrase like secret sauce, right?
Yeah.
What's kind of been your secret sauce, I guess, to your success as John Berdahl, the entrepreneur, the ophthalmologist? What's been your secret sauce?
I think that the first thing is probably that I care about right and wrong and try to do what's right. I think that that's number one, but I would say that I'm a good thinker.
Hmm.
When I'm paying attention, I can be an effective communicator.
Hmm.
Those would probably be the big three.
Hmm.
Maybe if I was to add a last one, it would be it's hard for me to not execute on something if I think it's a worthy problem. So I just kind of can, if there's something left on my plate, I just got to finish it. And that probably helps too. Those would be the four ingredients to my sauce.
Love it. Is it spicy?
I'm so vanilla, dude. I'm from South Dakota. I mean, there's not a lot more boring than me.
Uh, all right. So one more thing, and then we'll finish off here. This is something I'm curious about. When I look at your beautiful life and success that you've had, well deserved, earned, right? Successful in business and married, beautiful kids, all of these things. Are there areas of your life that you feel like could use a boost? And what areas are they, and kind of how are you thinking about that in this next phase of your life?
Yeah, so the answer is yes. They ebb and flow.
Right.
Remember the first time I went to give a talk somewhere and I got off the airport and I go down the escalator and there was a driver that had a sign with my name on it. And I thought, holy smokes, this is awesome. And then I got home from that trip and my wife told me to take out the garbage. And I didn't, I tried to explain to her what a big deal I was now. And it wasn't very effective. And so, so when I fly into a town and I'm sitting by the window and I look down and I see those houses, it's so good for me
Mm,
because I see each house and I think in there's a people, family with ideas and hopes and dreams and problems just like you have. And my, to use your words, beautiful life from the outside isn't, you know, that much different.
yeah.
The that I have is that my kids are happy and healthy, and that the relationship I have with my wife is good and kind and fun, and we like each other. And that probably the biggest difference is especially compared to how I grew up, we don't have to worry about money, in the same way. So that's probably the
Yeah.
biggest difference. But other than that, the differences are very minuscule compared to the similarities. And so my challenges are just like everybody else's, make a better relationship with my spouse, have a great relationship with my kids, balance the things that I'm interested in, entrepreneurialism and companies, and when they need me, with being the dad and the husband, the partner and the friend that I need to be. So I just don't think that I think we're all going through the same stuff. And what it means to be a good citizen of humanity is we're just humans trying to help other humans be better humans.
Yeah, I think you hit it with that word, right? If there's any word that kind of defines what we are all pursuing, and it's a worthy pursuit, is balance, right?
Mhm.
So many different parts to us. Being an entrepreneur, being a husband, a father, a clinician, and to do all of that well is a lifelong thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Journey. Man, Dr. Berdahl, thank you so much for joining us today. It is always very insightful to just get to tap into your mind a little bit. I always love talking to you. We appreciate it very much. I also want to take a moment to just thank our listeners. We appreciate each and every one of you. Can't do what we do without you. If you like our podcast, please share it with your friends and on social media. And till we meet again, wishing all of you an amazing week ahead. Dr. Berdahl, any parting thoughts before we end it?
Just want to say I'm grateful to have colleagues like you and patients that put our trust in us. And we've got a burden of responsibility. We've been given a lot, so let's work hard to deliver on it.
Amen to that, brother. Thank you so much.
Thanks, bud.
Connect with Dr. Shez at visionarydoc.com.